David Sedaris, welcome to the public.
Thank you so much for having me, Kevin.
How's your book tour going so far?
My book tour started just a couple of days ago, but I was on a lecture tour before. So I went to 36 cities in 36 days. And then the next day I started my book tour. And so I'm on my book tour until June 8th. So I think I'm going to, 23 cities, 24. Some cities, I was in Toronto for 2 days and I was in New York for 2 days. I don't look too far ahead. I look at my week to come and that's all.
Do you like you've mentioned that you like going and traveling around. Is it the pace you like about it, or is it just getting out and connecting with readers?
I think it's, when I'm working, I'm just alone in a room by myself. And so I think that's what I like, is just meeting so many people and talking to them. And I don't know, I ask a question and then I ask a follow-up question. And sometimes the things that you're hearing after that are just mind-blowing, really. And I heard, people tell me jokes and I write them down. And I don't know, at the end of the day, I've just got a whole lot to think about.
Is it one of those things where a band will go on tour and then it almost makes the material for the next album?
I feel like at the end of any tour, I could write a story about a tour.
Right.
Right? Like, I wrote a story about my book tour for the last essay collection. That's in my new book, but I feel like I could write a story about this tour as well. Like a theme develops during the tour. I never start out with it, but it kind of develops over the course of the tour. And I would like to try to construct a story using the jokes that I've been told. Like a couple of tours ago, that was my theme. I decided I wanted jokes, and I wanted people to tell me jokes. And I wrote them down, and a lot of them I had heard before, or I would hear repeated. But I would like to kind of stitch those jokes together in such a way as to make a story. I mean, obviously I'd need a little narrative in there, but I'm sorry, to answer your question, I feel like every tour is its own kind of separate story in which I move to place, but with under a different canopy.
Now, a couple of my favorite stories in this book and throughout your work is when you talk about your childhood. And I'm curious how that actually works. Like, are you surprised that you have new stories to mine? Or, I mean, for myself, it's one of those things where if I try to directly think about, what happened when I was a teenager or when I was in elementary school, I'm sort of faced with just this blank. So, like, for instance, you talk about the one about swimming and not measuring up in your swim meets with your competitor called Greg, is it?
Uh-huh.
So, like, how does that story just come to you out of the blue when you're thinking about something else, then you write it down and remember it? Or how does that process work of recalling those memories?
That was something I always wanted to write about.
So you had it sort of stored away?
Well, I had it stored away. My dad, when I was on the swim team, there was a kid on my team named Greg. And my dad was crazy about Greg, and he would not stop talking about Greg. And I was so jealous of Greg, just so jealous. And I was and then after that, when my dad got through being in love with Greg, he fell in love with Donny Osmond, right? I saw this kid on TV and you won't believe. So it was always somebody like around my age who was successful that my dad would latch on to and talk about. So I was so jealous of this person. And I was at in Las Vegas, and I saw a big billboard with Donny Osmond's face on it, and I was swimming because I started swimming again after I quit smoking.
So how you start the essay, that was the actual, made you remember that again, or you just thought, I could connect this back?
Well, when I saw Donny Osmond on the billboard, and and my hair was wet from swimming, I thought, that's right, Greg Sakis. So it just all of a sudden seemed the time to write about it. Because often I'll try to write about something and it won't work out, and I realize I'm not the right distance from it, right? I had a story in the last book about my neighbor, Helen, right, who lived down the hall from me in New York. And I tried to write about Helen, probably about 10 years ago, and it just didn't work. And then I would put it into like this graveyard file and try it every summer. I would try, and it just didn't work. One day I was exactly the right distance away from it, and I could make it work. So when a story isn't coming together, I keep it, and I'll turn back to it later and then think, oh, maybe now. Like the story in the book about owls. I tried that, and it didn't work. And then I just got 2 years down the road, all of a sudden, it was time for it to work. So I think you need the right perspective on it, I suppose. You just need the right... For me anyway, even when horrible things happen, I think, well, one day this will be funny, right? One day, sitting in the doctor's office, in the waiting room of the hospital, in my underpants, and everybody else comes into the room fully dressed. And I'm there in my underpants, and they're not boxer shorts, they're briefs. And people are like looking at me out of the corner of their eye. And I'm thinking, one day, this will be funny. And I'll be able to write a story about it. So I just have to wait until that day. Like with Greg Sakis, I was so jealous. Like when your dad just goes on and on and on about somebody else, like a kid your age, and you think, well, he wants him to be his son instead of me. And that can hurt for a long time, even when you're in college and after you're in college. It can... Because my dad just moved on to other people. He still does it, with other people.
Even today.
Oh, yeah. And so it
being a number one best-selling author doesn't count, I guess.
No, my dad doesn't really understand. When I told my dad my book was number one on the New York Times bestseller list, he said, well, it's not number one on the Wall Street Journal list. And so my publicist last week sent me that Wall Street Journal, who's number one on the Wall Street Journal list? Me. But I talked to my dad the other day, and I didn't mention it. I didn't mention anything about the book, and he didn't either. It's just better not to talk about it. Because my dad doesn't understand, and I can't expect that. Like, I don't understand anything about engineering. So he doesn't understand about writing, and why would I expect him to? At this point, he's 90 years old. So it's just funny to me now that I would ever have expected him to understand that.
I find that I've been thinking about that a lot in preparing for this interview, and that it seems such a strange paradox in that your stories seem to connect and are known for being vulnerable, right? You're talking about moments when you don't feel like you measure up, or you feel like an outsider, or you come across as goofy or misinformed or something like that. And yet at the same time, by doing this, you parlayed it into over years into an enormous brand, an enormous success. Do you think about that paradox ever? And do you try to reconcile the two?
Gosh. I don't, for the life of me, understand my success. I don't. When I see people buying the book, I just want to say, are you sure? Or are you just doing this to make me feel good? So I don't understand.
So you literally can't let it register almost in a way? Like that you have done well?
Well, when I guess I like hearing people read out loud, right? So I would buy a ticket to go hear somebody read out loud. Not me necessarily, but I would buy a ticket to hear somebody read out loud. And when your books do well, there's obviously a natural guilt that comes along, and you think about all the people who are much better writers who don't sell as many books, and you think how unfair that is, and why am I selling these books and they're not? And I don't let it destroy me, but I do think about it. I do think, just because your book does well doesn't mean it's a good book. If I look on the New York Times bestseller list, I see lots of books that are just crap. And so what am I going to say? Like, oh, my book's not crap, but that book by the person on the reality TV show, that's crap, but my book's not. Like, well, then somebody else like saying that my book's just as crap as the guy who's on the reality TV show. So I actually don't concentrate on stuff like that too often. I mean, when you're on the book tour, you're on a book tour and you're on the book tour to get results, and your publicist is calling you very excited because your book is here or there, and so it's part of your life. But other than that, it's not a part of my life. I mean, it would probably be a part of my life if nobody bought my book. That would be probably very much part of my life. So it's kind of it's not a part of my life luxuriously, I suppose.
Do you ever think about it? Like, do you follow the results of how many books have been sold or how many tickets have been sold? Like, if it wasn't doing as well as it did last book, would you worry about it?
Oh yeah,
you would.
Like when I go on tour, I always, at the end of every night, I go back to my hotel room and I write how many people were there, what I read, in what order, and how long it took me to sign books. And then I'll go back and I'll look, okay, the last time I was in this town, how did it do? And if I sold 200 fewer tickets this time that I was in Lansing, Michigan, East Lansing, 200 fewer tickets this time than I did the last time, I'm going to lay awake all night. And I'm going to say, it's over. It's over for me because I sold 200
But do you really,
tickets.
but do you actually feel like that?
Oh, yeah.
Really? Like you honestly feel like maybe my career as a writer is over?
Well, because if you're lucky, you have a little bit of time and you do well, right? It doesn't last for anybody. But if you're very lucky, you have a little brief period of time, but it doesn't last. And so I'm always thinking, is this the moment that I've started my downhill? Like, because has it started yet, I suppose. But on this last tour, generally ticket sales were up. Like, I know we sold 1,200 more tickets in Toronto this time than I did the last time because I moved into a different place. I was at Massey Hall the last time and I was at the Sony Center this time. I think he said it was 1,200 more tickets. So, so that's great. So if, 200 down in East Lansing, who cares? I'm up 1,200 in Toronto. So I do think about that. I do think about, and it was very important to me that, like if nobody bought my new book, I would think the same thing. But now instead I feel like, well, who knows? It's only been out for a few weeks, but I already think, well, then the next book will be a flop. So I'm already suffering.
But this is amazing, I think, to a lot of people because, I mean, if you can't feel like sort of relish in success, like feel like, okay, yeah, I can let my guard down a bit now, at least for a bit, like, and relish in that I've done a good job, then who could? There would never be that moment. Neil Armstrong on getting to the moon would be like, oh, I just got here by mistake.
Well, I mean, I think what confidence I do have, I think I got from writing for the New Yorker, right? Because the New Yorker doesn't have to take my stuff, and like I always say, like if something's published in Esquire magazine and you don't like it, then it could be a bad story. But if something's in the New Yorker and you don't like it, there's something wrong with you. And so that's given me what confidence I have is I think, well, if it was that bad, like I don't read reviews, right?
Why not?
Last one I read was in 2000, and it was a good review, but it just confused me because I thought, oh, really? Is that what you like? Is that what you want me to do?
And do you not read them because it'll make you self-conscious in your writing, or in?
Yeah. Plus, I don't know. Like I can work with one editor, but I can't work with 5 or 6 editors, who are all giving you different advice. You just go crazy that way. So you pick one editor you trust and work with that editor. And you don't, like when my editor at the New Yorker gives me notes on a story, I don't then turn to somebody else and say, do you think this? Because I'm just going to work with that one editor.
Right.
So, and I love my editor for the book as well. So there were stories that were edited by the New Yorker that just went straight into the book, and then there were new stories that were edited by my editor, and I really, they're both really great at their jobs, and they're both really important to me. But nothing like seeing your name in the New Yorker. There's just nothing like it. And I thought it would wear off, but because I've been in the New Yorker for like 20 years now, but it doesn't wear off. And whenever I have a story in the New Yorker, I open it to the title page and I put it on my kitchen table and I walk by and I think, wait a minute, is that my name? Wait a minute, that's my name in the New Yorker? And I want my 20-year-old self to see it. That's who I'm trying to be, is my 20-year-old self. Because my 20-year-old self would just die if he knew that he was in the New Yorker. He would just die. I mean,
when you were starting out, like when you were in your 20s, were you like, if one of your friends was, got something published or did something successful, that would you feel jealous of them? Would you feel like, would that make you feel worse in a way?
I mean, it was interesting. I dropped out of college. I went to college and then in North Carolina, and then I went to college at Kent State, and then I dropped out. And then I was a visual artist. I was going to be a visual artist. And so I was living in Raleigh, and everybody entered their work for the biennial at the North Carolina Art Museum. And I got in. And no one else in our little friendship group got in. And that was the first time I ever saw what happens then. And then it was like decided that it was just a sellout to be in the museum. Everybody kind of decided.
You had to come up with those rationalizations. Why?
Well, no, other people did.
Right.
My friends did. Like there had to be so then it was, all of a sudden it was better to have not gotten into the museum, because getting into the museum meant that you were like a commercial sellout, basically. And that was the first taste I ever got of that. And I thought, really? And I realized that if they'd gotten in, I probably would have felt that same way. I probably would have felt like, that they were my friends, but I mean, basically we're all competing with each other. That's why I don't like to have friends who are writers. I don't really, I don't know that I have.
Because it'd be hard to not compare yourself to each other?
Yeah. Well, plus, if a writer, I went to Yaddo for a while. For a month, and Yaddo's a writer's colony in Saratoga Springs, New York. And I went when I was working on the book Naked, and it was the first time I'd really been you're lumped together with like 15 other writers, and you have to have dinner every night together, which is a horrible idea. And someone would tell a story, and I'd reach for my notebook, and they'd say, "I'm already using that." Like, I want to be with people who have like amazing stories to tell. And are like, really? You want to write that down? Great. I'd love that, because I don't know. I don't even know how to spell. That's who I want. That's who I want to be hanging out with. And writers aren't necessarily good. I don't know if they're good friends to have in the beginning, in the first place. But I just like having friends who are just normal people.
You said something interesting in your most recent interview with Terry Gross on NPR, where you said, how you don't actually, even though your stories are vulnerable and about some of your past failings or when you haven't felt like you measure up, you don't actually feel that sense when you are performing them or talking about them. And that, of course, there's, as an aside, you say, there's the persona we all present to the world, and then there's the real you, and hopefully they're as close as possible. And I find that really interesting, because you've done so much self-inwardly looking work in radio and in your writing. So you have this persona, and people have an expectation of who you are. Do you find that, I guess, first, how close are the two, would you say, between who you are and the persona you have to the world in your artistic work? And do you find it constraining at all to have such a public image and such sort of a way that people think of you?
Well, I mean, when you write about yourself, you become a character. I mean, there's a real you, like my boyfriend Hugh, right? There's the real Hugh, and then there's the character of Hugh. And after a while, Hugh cannot do things that are out of Hugh character. or I'm just not going to write about them because people would say, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. He was supposed to be the sensible, capable one. You know,
Yeah.
he can't be doing that. And consequently, I would never write. You know, I tend to put myself down when I'm writing about myself, right? I would never write.
That day when you did everything right and you felt like the life of the party.
Right. I probably would not write that about myself. I
So you do feel like that, or like you do have parts of you that would not be reflected in your work and that what comes across as the David Sedaris in sort of the
sure.
public imagination.
I mean, I think it's easier for me to answer your question if I look at other people, right? Like, so people think, like my sister Amy, you know, they see her on TV and they have this idea that she's wacky and she's zany, you know, and she's nothing like that. You know, if they met her, what would surprise them is how inquisitive she is and what a good listener she is. But they would expect her to be, you know, and when you're on TV, you kind of play this kind of super version of yourself, like a caricatured version of yourself, you know, and it's not who she is at all, really. I don't know. I mean, I don't feel like I'm that. I don't feel like I'm that different than who I am. Well, I don't know. Again, because it's me, I can't really tell. I mean, were you disappointed when you met me? Did you think, were you expecting something more? Did you think that my clothes would be different, or did you think?
No, not at all. But I know for me, like I remember the first time I went traveling, you know, after university, I found it just enormously freeing because suddenly there was no expectations for me. And not that there was any negative expectations for me before, but I had never even really felt what it was like to be in the absence of those expectations of who Kevin is, you know? And I just found that really rewarding and empowering in a way. And for me, so I would expect that, of course, everyone's different from the self we present to the world. But for me, I would be nervous of getting too stuck in that, or I'd feel constrained almost, even if it was one of my own doing.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But I guess when I'm
So,
on
like, do you feel like
tour,
that at all? Like, when you go on tour, people meet you. Does that come across that people expect you to be a certain way, and if you aren't, they're not as enthralled as they should be?
well, I think sometimes people just hear or see what they want to. You know, like there have been times in my life when I've said to people, "Oh, I grew up in North Carolina." They'll say, "Well, I hear that in your accent because you have that Southern twang." I said, "No, I don't. You're just saying that because I told you that I grew up in North Carolina." But when I'm on tour, it's different. I mean, you know, it's like I have an on switch under my shirt, and I flick the on switch on, and I'm on when I'm on tour. And then I go home, and it's not a part of my life at all. You know, my neighbors have no expectations of me. I'm just the foreigner. And when you're the foreigner, you're really the lowest life form. You know, people just, you know, they're either thinking that you're taking their benefits, or you know, you're cheating them out of money, or you're have no right being here, or you're taking their job, or
But do you like that
I
they
love
don't?
it. I
Yeah,
love it.
you find it freeing.
Yeah, very, very. I think too, when people are thinking that you don't really count, they'll be themselves in a way that they wouldn't, because they think, oh, you don't really understand. You know, you wouldn't get it. And I love that. Absolutely love it. Even in English, people think, well, you don't really understand our ways. You know, like we can talk freely in front of you because you're not going to get it.
Right. It's like talking in front of a young child or something. You can.
Well, you know, it's the way that Americans talk in front of Mexican busboys. Is what it is. You know, like you're a human. I guess you're a human. That's what it is. Like, okay, technically you're a human. Busboys, Mexican busboys, man, they're the ones who I want to read their book because they're invisible. They're ghosts. No one sees them. No one hears them. I was somewhere. It was shocking. I was at a hotel I think it was in California last week, and the guy whose job it is to come and clear things away, well, it's a busboy, he spilled something on my friend's purse, and he said, "Oh, I'm just having that kind of a day," and he mopped it off of her purse, and he made himself real. He made himself, because normally, I don't know.
It doesn't even register.
Yeah, they wouldn't even say anything at all, and it was just fascinating to me. Just fascinating. I mean, yeah, people just expect them to do their jobs and keep their mouths shut, and they're just invisible people. And you think, well, they probably snuck into the country, and I don't know, like I just always wonder about them, and I just always think, God, the things they must see and hear, because people are exactly themselves in front of them, and that's really the judge of your character, really, how you treat people who just have to suck it up. You see that in hotels all the time. Like, you see people screaming at maids or having meltdowns at the front counter, and and if you have a job like that, you can't say you can't say what's on your mind. You have to act. You have to just suck it up. I mean, if you're the woman, one thing I just realized is, like, when people are checking in at the airport, you can curse as much as you want as long as you don't meet someone's eye. Like, if you're at the ticket machine checking in and it tells you your flight's over, is delayed or was canceled, you can say whatever you want. But if you look the woman behind the counter in the eye and say it, then she's going to call her supervisor.
You've been writing your journals since 1977. I was curious, for you, is writing, do you think it makes you a better person to write? And not even publicly, but even just your journal? Because you said before, you get that distance, or, it doesn't feel as, one day this will be funny.
I think it makes me a better person to reread what I've written, because sometimes I reread something and I think, oh, I don't like this person at all. Look at this person on this page from February 5th, 2001. I don't like him at all. And that's good. It's good to think, well, if I don't like that person, I probably shouldn't be doing that stuff, or I shouldn't be talking like that person did. So.
And then do you try to incorporate that? Like, would you?
Sure. I don't know how successful I am, but I think it's always good to
say you had written
yourself
down how you yelled at the busboy, then you would.
Yeah.
Say, I'll try to be nicer to the people who work at the hotel.
Well, like Hugh, if I've never been mean to a busboy. Hugh will say, if Hugh's unhappy, he'll say, I haven't been happy in 3 years. And so I just pick up my diary and I say, look at here. You were happy here. You were happy here. You were happy here. Like, diary's good for that too. Like, you can say, well, actually, no, it isn't as drastic as I'm making it out to be, but it can be, by the same token, you can say my left foot has been hurting me for 3 years. You can say, oh, that's when my foot started hurting me. That was 3 years ago my foot started hurting me. Most of what I write in my diary is just crap. I mean, I get up this morning and I write, there's a million petty things, and then there's like some really fascinating things and some people I met last night and some jokes. And like I said, it's just, I'm not gonna qualify it now. I just kind of put it all down there, and who knows, maybe one day I'll write a story. When I'm writing, I'll write a story about hotels of the world, and I'll need that description of my hotel room that I wrote this morning, or I'll have a joke roundup and I'll need those jokes that I wrote last night, or maybe I'll never need any of it, but got to do it.
Is the vast majority of what you write, like almost all of it, would it be because, someday you're thinking I might be able to use this? Or do you also write in your journal if you've been worrying about something, or just as a way to sort of get that comforting distance from yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I started writing a diary before I ever knew that I would be using it for anything. So, but a lot of it is, it helps me make sense of the world. I write it down on a piece of paper, and then I can kind of see it, and I can often see my part in it, and I can see Like I have the story in the verbal story, it's all someone else's fault. And on the written story, I write it down and I think that is completely my fault. I owe that person an apology.
So it's something like when your friend tells you how they've been wronged, when you're listening to the story, you can sort of say, well, I don't know if it's entirely their fault. So that by doing that, you can sort of be that person to yourself almost.
Yeah. Yeah. In a way I can't with other people, because it's pretty hard. Let's say if somebody gets a divorce and if they're saying, I can't believe that he left me, that's really not a good time to say,
right.
Well, actually,
but you can be thinking that to yourself
on him 2 years ago and you never had a good thing to say about him. So actually, you always hope that someone will say that in your defense, when somebody's saying bad things about you. But Hugh's mother does that. It's maddening. It's maddening. She always takes the other person's side.
Well, I mean, I interviewed Jonathan Goldstein a while ago.
I love Jonathan Goldstein.
Yeah, me too. And you both seem to have a similar sensibility in that it's a lot of your stuff is reflecting on being self-conscious or trying to normalize yourself in the world. And one story he tells is being really young and staring into a mirror and trying to stare at his image until he escapes his sense of meanness, like who he is, like escapes the prison of the self. First, does that relate to you as well? Like, do you feel imprisoned by the self, and do you still feel trapped if you are? Like, do you still feel like you want to sort of transcend who you are and that sense of being stuck as an individual?
No, I think I aged out of that. I'm 56, so I think I aged out, and so I think I'm at an age now when I think there's nothing I can do about it, at this point. So
it's made you more easygoing just with time.
Yeah, I mean, after a point, and plus after a point, you become invisible. It's like being neutered in a way. After a certain point, after your hair is gray, and if somebody said, "What did the guy look like?" Like if I were to rob a bank and they said, "What did he look like?" They would say, "Old. He was old." Like that's all they would say because you just look like every other old person.
You become a busboy in a way.
Yeah. Except you're still white, so people aren't gonna be careful about what they say in front of you. But as you get older and you become invisible, a lot of those concerns just sort of, you think, okay, what if I haven't accepted myself now? Like, really? Like, at the age that I am? Like I have inserts into my shoes and I haven't accepted myself by now. So no, I don't feel trapped. I still feel like I could reinvent myself if I needed to. Like, that's such a North American, or maybe just American idea, that you can do that.
Reinvent yourself?
Yeah, that it's never too late, that you can keep doing it. It's heartening, I think. I mean, in America, that's so big, too. Almost like Canada. You could move to the other side of the country and no one's going to know who you are and you start all over. Whereas you look at a country like England or Ireland, good luck. So they can't do it quite with the ease that we can. But it's always so nice knowing you have that safety net.
Right. And is that why you move around so often?
No, I just like moving. I just like the challenge of it and the newness of it. And I wanted to move to Germany, but I don't think he won't go to Germany with me. But I really like it there, and I just wanted to see, test it, see how much I liked it. And the language seems fun to me. Hard to learn because everybody speaks English so beautifully. It would be hard you'd have to move to a little town. But I used to think I needed to live in a city, but I like being in the country now.
Well, just to end off, I mean, would you ever subvert your public persona of David Sedaris and come out to maybe star in an action movie or something like that?
An action movie. Wow. It's funny. Often when I go to, when I'm on tour, I'll be in America and I'll be at a public radio station and they'll say, oh, we wrote something for you to read for our fundraiser. Can you read it? We wrote it in your voice. And then I look at it and I think, that's what I sound like? That's how I come across to you? Like there's never any way in hell that I would read this thing out loud. It's appalling to me. Like every time I think maybe it's like somebody doing like a really bad imitation of you. Or you hope it's a bad imitation. You're just praying that it's a bad imitation of you.
Right.
Let's hear it for Jonathan Goldstein. Isn't that guy amazing?
Definitely, yeah.
I love his stories on the radio. Just absolutely love them. He's such a smart guy and he doesn't remind me of anybody else.
Really? Because from the outside, I mean, you can see a thread from him to you.
I don't see it because he's smart. I mean,
You don't think you're smart?
No, not the way that he's smart. I mean, he's like, if you were to test us both, and I don't know I don't remember. I took an IQ test once, but I don't remember like if 60's high or if it's 300. I don't remember any of that stuff. But let's say it was a scale of 1 to 100, just on raw intelligence. I would be 30, and Jonathan would be like 98, I think. He's really, I love something. His stories about youth are so interesting to me because I can't imagine him. It's so hard to imagine him as a child because he just seems so smart and so fully realized. It's hard to imagine him any less intelligent than he is. And word by word, like putting this word in front of that word behind the other word, he's such a good writer.
Well, I'm sure he said he looks up to you too. I mean, you influenced a lot of people through This American Life and through your books.
I think he'd look down. He's a little taller than I am, so he would look down on me.
Well, David Sedaris, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Kevin.
Well, that was my conversation with humorist and best-selling author David Sedaris. His latest collection of essays is called Let's Explore Diabetes with Owls. Well, that's all the time we have this week for the public. To find out more about the program and to access past episodes, you can visit us online at thepublicradio.org. And as always, you can subscribe to our podcasts in iTunes. Just search up The Public. Thanks this week to CIUT Station Manager Ken Stour, as well as Eric Betlam. Well, I'm Kim Caners. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time.